Trust me, this video is gonna be fun. We are here to break the rules of chess and at the same time trap our opponent's pieces. Most of the games begin in a way of targeting the weak f7 pawn, let's say against the Caro-Kann defense. Black takes in this position, and so here I recommended the move knight to g5, and after pawn takes, bishop takes, the top played move here is knight to f6 by far, and that's when you can take advantage of this f7 pawn, which is very weak, because the idea here is that if king takes, we now give black a check, and we'll end up winning the free queen on d8 because the black king cannot go back to e8. So that's just to demonstrate how weak the f7 pawn can be. Now, the traps that I'm about to show you are from black's perspective. We are going to allow white to take advantage of the weak f7 pawn if he wants. I mean, we don't care. We are going to be allowing white to take this weak pawn. So trap number one, this may happen in the tracks like counter gambit, where white begins with pawn to e4 and then we go e5, knight f3 attacking the pawn, then we go knight c6, bishop c4. Again, you can see white is simply targeting the weak f7 pawn. Then what do? Knight to f6, inviting knight g5, which creates a double threat on the f7 pawn, and this is what we want. Because right now you guys think we want to play the move pawn to d5. Nope, it is bishop c5, allowing white to take this pawn if he wants to. And surprisingly enough, this opening is also playable in OTB classical matches. As you can see for yourselves, the idea is that if black takes with a knight, attacking two of our big pieces, here we just go bishop takes f2, check. And here, trust me, the best that white can do is just to go king f1, which is not even the savior, by the way. But let's just look at what happens after king takes f2. Here we simply go knight takes e4 with check. And it doesn't even matter where the king goes, we're still going to have a slight advantage or a completely winning position. For example, if king e1, we simply go queen h5 check. If king e2, we simply met white in style after knight b4 check, and the only move is king takes e4, then queen f4 checkmate, as these squares are guarded by our knight. So you won't see that. Maybe they are going to play something like pawn to g3 after queen h5 check. Okay, let's say pawn to g3 by white. Here we just simply take the pawn on g3, intending to take the rook with discovery check. And so if h takes g3, this is already winning. Queen takes h1 check. If king e1, we have knight d4 check, which completely separates the king from the queen, and the queen will be a free piece. If bishop f1, which is the top played move, here we just castle short. Look at the threats. We want to take the knight. We are pinning the bishop on f1, and this is one way in which this defense can go. Let's look at another way. Alright, this is the main line. Again, if king takes, we go knight takes e4 check. We saw what happened if, for example, white plays two of these moves. But what if white plays king e3 here? Well, we still go queen h4, that's the key move. And trust me, queen f2 check is coming. At worst, we are always looking forward to castling long. So here white may think there's nothing that is going to defend our knight on e4 if we play queen f2 check. And that's why you see them taking the poor rook on h8. But oops, this is a mating 4. After queen f4 check, if king e2, you already know the mating pattern. If king d3, we have knight b4 again, check, and the king will be forced to go back to e2, then it will be checkmate. So you see white playing king e2 anyways. Just go queen f2 again. If king d3, you already know the mating pattern. Queen f4 checkmate. So clearly, this is bad for white. Let's look at another possibility before we move on to the next trap. Alright, so knight takes f7, attacking our rook and queen. Then we take on f2 with check, king takes, knight takes e4 check. Now instead of king e3, white may play king g1. Well, against this move, just go queen h4, intending to checkmate on f2 once again. If pawn to g3, well, you just take the pawn on g3. At worst, you're going to take the bishop on c4, which is undefended. So let's say h takes g3, just take the pawn with check. And after king f1, the only move, you now go pawn to d5, attacking the bishop plus paving way for your light squared bishop to join the party. So if bishop takes d5, which is the top played move, well, here you just go rook f8, pinning the knight once again. If queen h5, trying to hold on to the knight, you go knight b4, intending to remove one more defender of this knight. if bishop b3, you now play bishop takes c2, intending to capture the free rook on a1. And please note that white cannot take the bishop, otherwise he is going to lose the knight which was protected by this bishop. So here pawn to g6 is a master level move, but rook takes f7 is more simpler. King e2, you go bishop g4 check, and that's how you win the white queen in just 15 moves. Alright, let's go back. Okay, so again we sacrifice on f2 instead of king f1. White plays king takes on f2. Then we go knight takes e4 check. Still looking at the king g1 variation. Here we still go queen h4 intending to mate. Then instead of pawn to g3, you might see white playing queen f3. The idea is to take the rook on h8 on the next move. Well, we just go rook f8, pinning the knight again to the queen. And if pawn to g3, which is the top played move according to the Lichess database, here we just take the pawn once again, attacking the rook. If h takes g3, now we take the bishop on c4 and also attacking the pinned knight. And let's say if white plays pawn to d3, we just go queen takes f7, emerging with a clear exchange up plus a pawn advantage. What more do you want? Alright, so looking at this trap one more time. After bishop takes f2 check, instead of king takes f2, if king f1, we can always play queen e7, allowing white to take the rook on h8. And trust me, even in this position, Stockfish thinks we are still okay. Position is about equal. Here we can just continue with pawn to d5, attacking the bishop. By the way, white cannot even take our bishop because of the same traps that I just showed you. So e takes d5 is the top played move. Knight d4, that's what we play. And the top played move according to the Lichess database is pawn to c3, trying to chase this knight away. This is what you see your opponents playing. And I just recommend you go bishop g4. By this time, trust me, you are almost winning. The queen is almost trapped. The only move is queen f4 check, and then you block with your knight. And after, let's say, king takes the bishop, which is the top played move, you go queen h4 check. If king f1, there's a mate on e1, so white has to play g3. You go queen f6 check. And if king e1, you have knight f3 with some possible discovery ideas here. So if king d1, well, you play knight d4, discovery check. King e1, you play a silent move queen f5, intending to go queen e4 next, and that will be check. If c takes d4, queen e4 check, king f2, this is completely winning. Queen takes h1, next you are threatening to take the dark squared bishop and also the pawn on h2 and everything that white has in this world. Stockfish says position is about negative 16.7 here, which is suffice to win the game. White may decide to play bishop takes f7 check. Now here, let me turn on the Lichess database so that I show you the top played moves. How white goes from having a good position to a worst position. Alright, so here we are. Just play king e7. Next you want to play pawn to h6, winning this bishop. And so the top played move here, as you can see, is bishop b3. After this, just go queen e8. Which they don't play most of the times. You just want to develop your queen, push pawn to d6. And again, you can see the top played move here is castle short. I only want to show you the top played moves. You go pawn to d6, paving way for your light squared bishop. They'll play pawn to c3, again the top played move, preparing for pawn to d4 pawn push. Here is why you can now play bishop g4, attacking this queen since the pawn on f2 is pinned to the king. And again, you can see the most played move is queen e1, then just go h6, forcing white's knight to be misplaced. Let's say knight h3. Here we can even take the knight if we want, doubling up white's pawns, or play a better move, queen d7. And as you can see, position is about negative 2.0 in favor of black, which is suffice to win the game. So here just play queen d7. Maintaining the pressure. They may play pawn to d4, attacking your bishop, and this is why you can trick them by taking the knight on h3. What do you want to do? If they take your bishop, you have queen g4 and there's a mate coming on g2. There's nothing they can do about it. They can try pawn to g3. You just go queen f3, intending to checkmate on g2. And so they have to take your bishop, after which you take your pawn, asking them to take your bishop once again. At this time, they are tired. They are going to take your poor bishop and checkmate is now unavoidable. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how easy chess can be. Let's move on. Now you guys, I would love to know if at all you are enjoying these kinds of content where I just present a list of different traps in one video, just like this, and you can do that by giving this video a thumbs up so that I know. And don't just watch. You can also support my channel by simply subscribing so that you don't miss any future uploads. The link for my channel is in the description down below or in the card above. You can do that in less than 5 seconds during this short break. Okay, trap number 2. Again, this happens in the 2 knights defense. Freeze variation. White starts with pawn to e4. Then we go e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. Again, eyeing the weak f7 pawn. So you just go knight f6. Let them play knight g5 with the same ideas again, and then you go pawn to d5 this time. We are going to play the freeze variation. E takes d5 is by far the top played move, simply attacking our knight. But what are we going to do? Knight f5, the top played move? Nope. Knight d4, a sideline. And here, trust me, most of your opponents will think pawn to d6 renews the threat of capturing on f7. Wait a second. We have the move queen takes d6. They are going to play knight takes f7. The top played move, again attacking your queen and rook at the same time. So here you just go queen c6, attacking the bishop and also eyeballing the weak g2 pawn. If rook takes h8, which they are going to do, definitely, you don't even take the bishop, you take the pawn on g2, attacking the rook on h1. White has to save the rook. You go queen e4 check. If queen e2 blocking the check, we are simply going to take that queen with our knight and it will be game over. And so you will see most of your amateur players blocking with a bishop. Whoops, that's checkmate. Because the bishop cannot take our knight, it is pinned to the king by our queen. Now, I'm not going to say much about this defense since I have a full video on this opening. I'm sure it has popped up in the card above just now. But let's just quickly look at the other line where white plays bishop takes f7 instead of knight takes f7. Also, white just played bishop c4, and then we play the 2 knights defense as usual. Then they go knight g5, attacking the weak f7 pawn. We still go pawn to d5. Let them take the pawn because we have knight d4. And after this, they may try the move pawn to d6. Once again, renewing the threat of capturing on f7. But this time with the bishop instead of the knight. What do? Well, we just play this move. King e7, a very silent move. By the way, we are just one move away from taking this bishop after pawn to h6. So black has to play bishop b3, the top played move again. First of all, we have to take this bishop, attacking the rook. And takes b3 is forced. We go pawn to h6, knight f3. And this is when we play pawn to e4. Now wait a second. It looks very weird to undefend a minor piece with knight g1, which is the correct move according to Stockfish. But what you see your opponents playing is knight h4, trying to create a new threat of knight g6 check, winning the rook on h8. But here we simply have this move, king f7, stopping knight g6 check. And next, you already know the move. We want to trap this knight with pawn to g5. The knight will have nowhere to go to, so they have to play pawn to g3. Again, the top played move according to the Lichess database. After g3, we continue with pawn to g5. They cannot go to f5 because we are simply going to take the knight with our bishop. So they have to play something like knight g2, which is again the top played move. And this is when we play bishop g4. And trust me, there is completely nothing that white can do to save his queen. They can hire a witch doctor if they want, or probably a sangoma, but the queen will still be dead. Anyways, let's move on to another trap. Trap number 3. This happens in the Blackburne Gambit. White starts with pawn to e4. We go e5. Knight f3, knight c6, then bishop c4. Now wait a second. instead of playing the 2 knights defense this time, or bishop c5, we go knight d4 immediately. Now I know this is a very dubious opening, but still playable in rapid, blitz and bullet games. And well, there's a way you can still hold on to the position. Even in classical matches, I'll show you. So what you will see most of your lower rated opponents playing is taking this free pawn on e5 since it is not defended by any piece. They will take the pawn, and here I recommend you go queen g5, attacking the knight. Oh, you're not just attacking the knight, you also allowed white to take advantage of your weak f7 pawn. So they'll take it with the knight, attacking your queen and the rook on h8. Again, what do? Queen takes g2, attacking the rook on h1. They have to move their rook, and whoops, sometimes history repeats itself. This is check. If queen e2 blocking the check, we'll simply take with the knight. So you see your opponents blocking with a bishop, and that's when you mate on f3. Because once again, this bishop is pinned to the king. It cannot take our knight on f3. Let's go back. Okay, so after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, the Italian game. Then we just play knight d4. See, instead of taking the free pawn on e5, white may play the correct move knight takes d4, which is the major downfall of this gambit. But let me show you how you can continue playing like a pro. So e takes d4, that's what you play. They'll play pawn to d3, that's the top played move. You go pawn to c6. These are some of the responses black players failed to see after e takes d4, and so the key move is pawn to c6 first. White to castle short. I'm only showing you the top played moves, by the way. And then here you just play knight f6. Now just to show you, bishop g5, which is the top played move, is very bad as it is only going to allow us develop our pieces, and castle short we play pawn to d6. This is how easy it is to come back into the game if you are playing against human beings with these dubious gambits. Now see, they may play pawn to e5, which seems to be very forcing. Here you just go pawn to d5. That's the secret move. So if e takes f6, which they are used to, you take the bishop. If rook e1 check, you always have bishop e6 defending the check. And to be honest with you, we always plan to castle long in the Blackburne Gambit. But if f takes g7, which is again the top played move, you simply take the pawn, and well, sometimes even castling short works, and I'm going to show you how. But the whole idea is that we would love to use this g file for our king's rook. If d takes, hey, we can do whatever we want here. Develop our queen, we castle long, but that seems to be too slow. The computer likes this move, castling short, because we are going to put our king on h8 and use this open file for our king's rook while we fix our pawn structure on the queen side. And you can judge by yourselves. I mean, this is how you can continue playing the Blackburne Gambit, even if your opponent thinks it's just a dubious gambit. Anyways, now instead of knight takes f7, white here can also play bishop takes f7 with check. Now, I don't like what most black players play here. King e7, yeah, it is okay, but you're not trapping anything here. White has an option to take your knight and retreat his line squared bishop. So the move that Stockfish likes here is king d8, which you should start playing, because right now we are still attacking the knight and also the pawn on g2. Look into the Lichess database. Castling short is the most played move in this position, not allowing us to take on g2. And after this, I suggest you just take the knight. If c3 attacking our knight, we have knight e6. And with this move, we can even take on e4 if white plays the top played move again, pawn to d4. So probably they'll play something like d3, holding on to their pawn, and that's when you play pawn to g5. Stopping f4. Now I'm showing you how to continue playing the Blackburne Gambit, which most YouTube videos don't. Bishop takes e6, you just take with your d pawn, still holding on to your g5 pawn. Stockfish here favors black with a negative 0.5 because of the many open lines that black has as highlighted. Anyways, let's move on to the last trap. Okay. Now this is the trap that I love so much. The trap that I'm about to show you involves two gambits, the Rousseau Gambit and the Lucchini Gambit. White starts with pawn to e4. We go e5, knight f3, knight c6. They play bishop c4 again, targeting the weak f7 pawn. And then here, what do? We go directly pawn to f5. This is called the Rousseau Gambit or the Rousseau Gambit, depending on your pronunciation. Now, wait a second. In all honesty, this is also played at Grandmaster level. If you don't believe me, check the Masters database here. You will see that Super GMs have played this with success. And what do we see here? Pawn to d3 is by far the top played move, which is where our trap lies. And so before I show you why e takes f5 is not a good move at all, let me first show you our trap, because that's what we are here for. Here white has to play normally pawn to d3, so that if we take the pawn, they can take back with their d pawn and they'll be fine. But here we just continue with bishop c5. And ladies and gentlemen, this has now become the Gioco Pianissimo Lucchini Gambit. So we have moved from the Rousseau Gambit to the Lucchini Gambit, which I presented in the video that has popped up in the card above. You need to check that out. Here we're just giving white one more chance to take advantage of the weak f7 square. So you see them going knight g5. Most of the times, once you see this move, they have lost the game. Just play pawn to f4, allowing them to occupy the f7 square. That's what they wanted. And that's when you go queen h4, completely giving them this rook on h8. By the way, if knight takes h8, there's a checkmate in one after queen takes f2. Checkmate. The most played move here, castling short, after which you now go knight f6, completely giving away your rook on h8 again. By the way, if white plays a passive move, we're just going to develop our rook to f8 and it will be fine. We'll just have a normal game. If knight takes h8 here, which is one of the most played moves, because white thinks there's no immediate checkmate coming this side, well, just go knight g4, intending to checkmate on h2. If they play pawn to h3, hallelujah, you now go knight takes f2, indirectly attacking the queen on d1. The top played move here is rook takes f2, after which you take with the queen does check, and it doesn't matter what white does here, king h1 for example. Now wait a second, if you watched my previous video on the Lucchini Gambit, which is already in the card above, you know the reason why we have to play pawn to f3 here. I'm not going to repeat that. Anyways, we want to mate on g1. If queen takes f3, because our queen is defended by our bishop on c5, so queen g1 checkmate is coming, and that's why you will see white taking on f3 with his pawn. And wait a second, what next? Well, we have this move pawn to d5, attacking the bishop, and trust me, bishop takes d5 is again the top played move. According to the Lichess database, that's when we play bishop takes h3. And there's no way for white to stop this mate which is coming on g2 or g1. For example, they may try to play a desperado move, bishop f7 check. We just go king f8. If knight g6, there's just nothing white can do to stop the mate. Anyways, to see more about this gambit, I suggest that you watch the video which is in the card above or in the description down below, because I don't want to repeat the same things that I covered in that video. I don't want to steal from you. Instead, let me just show you why e takes f5 is not a good move. So white plays pawn to e4, then we go e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, then we go immediately pawn to f5. Now here we know that pawn to d3 is the main move. That's what white should play. But hey, you see your lower rated opponents taking on f5. This is a long-term positional mistake, and let me show you why. One of the ways in which we can punish white is by going pawn to e4, attacking the knight. By the way, if queen e2, we always have moves such as queen e7. The knight will have to go back. Then we'll play knight f6 and pawn to d5, harassing the bishop on c4. So the top played move here is knight g1. So first of all, go knight to f6, stopping queen h5 check. And here white will play one of the most common moves, knight c3, just developing a piece. That's when you play pawn to d5. Bishop b3, you take the pawn on f5 with your bishop. d3, you go bishop b4, pinning the knight to the king. D takes e5, you take with your knight. bishop d2 and pinning the knight, you just simply take the bishop with your knight. Queen takes d2, you go pawn to d4 and the knight is dead. There's nothing that white can do. They can try queen e2 check. You just block with your queen, exchange queens, and it turns out that the knight is still in danger. It's still pinned to the king. If a3, you always play bishop a5 and the knight is finally dead. So this is just one of the ways in which the game can go. If e takes f5 happens, e takes f5 is a bad move, trust me, and I'll cover that in one of my future videos. Now let me just show you why I like this opening so much. I mean the Rousseau Gambit more than the Lucchini Gambit. See, the Lucchini Gambit goes like this: e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. In the Lucchini Gambit, we first of all play bishop c5, hoping that white plays pawn to d3 so that we can go pawn to f5. The problem with starting like this is that white might not play pawn to d3 on move number 4. In fact, the top played move is pawn to c3 or castling short. There are a few players who go pawn to d3, which is why I recommend starting with the Rousseau Gambit. That's just my pronunciation, by the way, if you want to play the Lucchini Gambit. So you just go right here, pawn to f5, cause advanced players from here will be forced to play the correct move, pawn to d3, just adding another defender to the e4 pawn, and that's when you now play bishop c5 to get to the Lucchini Gambit. Alright, so that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please, if you did, consider subscribing to my channel. Don't just watch. And also check out the link for my website in the description down below, where you can purchase my courses at very affordable prices. There you will also find the link for my Patreon page, where you can join membership to my masterclass and other stuffs. Alright, thank you for watching this video. Until next time.